Another case that is very vivid in my mind and will be for a very long time because it did not end well. A heat stroke case that we had earlier in the spring. Hi, Michelle here.
Joe.
We're from VetMedics. We are not a hospital. We are not veterinarians. We're veterinary technicians. And what we cannot do is diagnose, prescribe, and perform surgery. But what we can do is, in an emergency situation, is help you get your pet to the nearest veterinary hospital or clinic in the event that you are unable to do so. So another case that is very vivid in my mind and will be for a very long time because it did not end well. A heat stroke case that we had earlier in the spring. We're into the cooler months now, and we haven't really seen a lot of heat stroke cases more recently,
yeah.
And hopefully it's because owners are becoming more diligent, more educated about the severity of heat stroke and being more careful when they're traveling with their pets, so on and so forth. But this one was early in the spring of this past year, and it was still kind of cool out, but I think that we had some days in the 70s.
It was a warm day,
low 80s. The owner had the dog with him. It was a younger dog, I think 3 or 4 years old, in pretty good shape.
But it was a black dog.
It was a black dog, which does make a big difference. So they were traveling around in the car with the dog, and she had gone in to do her errands or went back in the house, and I don't know if she had forgotten about the pet or just didn't think that, it was a hot enough day. Well, the dog was left in the car for, I think, a couple of hours. So when she got back into the car, the dog was unconscious. They get to the nearest hospital, and it was at the end of the day, so the hospital was closing within the next hour. So we were called in on emergency to transport the pet to a 24-hour care facility. By the time we had reached the hospital, the dog's internal temperature was 106.7. I mean, that just seems like unconceivable, right?
Yeah. Very.
So, of course, the dog is unconscious, was intubated because it couldn't breathe on its own. We had to establish an airway. We're treating it for shock with cooling fluids and all of that. So I think it was maybe 10 minutes into the transfer, the dog required CPR. It coded. And we call the hospital and we call the owner, and of course they elect to continue CPR for the next 10 minutes, and we did, and we couldn't bring the dog back. It was a pretty nasty scene. The dog was just bleeding internally from the mouth, the nose, the rectum, and that was actually our first patient that has passed in our care.
Only one ever, right?
Yeah.
Only one
Which
ever.
is pretty good for 9 years, but
not good.
just one that shouldn't have happened. And it was a beautiful young dog, and we felt bad for the dog, of course.
Yeah.
We feel bad for the owners and
No, the
all
owners
healthcare
felt
professionals
terrible.
involved.
They weren't, ill-intentioned, but
No,
it certainly was definitely avoidable.
Yep.
And I think, people don't realize too that once the dog goes into heat distress, how tricky it is to treat. They can't be cooled off too much too quickly.
Correct.
It's very tricky. And again, I think because of that, when we're out and about and see people, in hot weather, hiking with dogs that might look like they're not in good shape, we just hate to see it.
Absolutely. I mean, we even see it this time of the year, like it's November 30th and it's about 60 degrees out.
Warm,
but some of these breeds, the brachiocephalic or pushed-in breeds, the black dogs, bigger black labs, Newfoundlands, things like that, bulldogs, of course. You got to be careful.